Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Joining us now, I'm really anticipating this with the Dow up 100 points. Julia Coronado was iconic at BNP Paribas during the crash, where she said, no, GDP isn't going to be as good as it's going to be. She nailed that call. Now with MacroPolicy Perspectives, one of our most astute Fed watchers as well. Julia, is the next thing we're going to get wrong the certitude that it's one and done on a rate cut? And what we really need to think about is sequential rate cuts into next year?
Well, Tom, I think actually the possibilities are fairly bimodal. So if you look at the market and what it's priced for several rate cuts next year. But I think either we're going to get one and done because things are stabilizing and growth is going to be okay, and the AI story has enough legs to power the economy, or we're really starting, we're in the early game turning of the labor market. And the Fed's going to have to cut not just to neutral, but through to neutral to an accommodative stance. So it's one or the other, it feels like to me.
You're so good at gaming GDP. My head is spinning. Paul Sweeney's head is spinning over nominal GDP. I got a 4% Atlanta GDP now. Maybe it's 3.8%. I got half of America flat on their back. What is the Coronado call for 2026 real and nominal GDP?
So first, if we start with the second half of this year, we have a read on Q3, and by all indications, it's very solid. But early indications are Q4 is that it's kind of squishy. The consumer auto sales have dropped. I'm not sure what Dana told you on the holiday season, but people seem to be price sensitive, price conscious, budget conscious, not hunkered down in a corner, but not booming. And so I think we're going to see strong Q3, subdued Q4. On average, we'll see an economy that is downshifted from last year on balance in 2025. And one of the reasons this is happening is structural. We've chosen a restrictive immigration policy that means basically no labor supply. So no labor supply, no jobs, less growth in paychecks and income, and a slower economy. And I think that will prevail into 2026, a lower trend growth rate for the U.S., even assuming some solid productivity tailwinds. You're still looking at growth with a one handle, maybe a low two handle, not a three handle.
Julia, so what do you think is receiving the priority from the Federal Reserve these days? The labor market, the inflation environment here? Is there one thing that's front and center for the Fed here today?
Well, it depends on who you ask, doesn't it? So there are a lot of people. There's 19 people on the committee, and they all have very different views of the world. It looks like the leadership, Chair Powell, President Williams, are coalescing around one more rate cut this year, an insurance rate cut, because you're highlighting the tension they face. You've got inflation that's not soaring or even necessarily accelerating in a meaningful way like we saw in the pandemic, but it's too high. It's running it closer to 3% than 2%, and it's not making any progress, and we don't expect any progress in the foreseeable future, or at least not next year. Not much progress, given the tariffs are still coming through. And that's a worry, not that inflation's getting out of control, but it's going to get embedded in the economy and people's behavior and people's psychology, and we'll get stuck at 3 and not get to 2. On the other hand, the unemployment rate's been creeping higher by 1/10 each of the last 4 months. Usually when we see this kind of movement, we get a break higher in the unemployment rate. The labor market cracks, we reach a tipping point, and all of a sudden we're looking at a recession.
Can we do a Friday Audible?
Sure.
On television, on radio, worldwide with Julia Coronado, a surveillance Audible. Okay, Julia, you're defined at Dallas Fed. Dallas Fed owns the southern border. I am as guilty as anyone of ignoring Mexico and focusing on Canada because I need the Montreal Canadiens to find an enforcer. Julia, help me with Mexico and the tariff. What's the dynamic right now with Mexico given tariffs?
Well, Mexico had been poised to be a beneficiary from this friendshoring or these reglobalizations or deglobalizations, in the sense that it's right next door. It's one of our largest trading partners. But the Trump administration has gone after our closest trading partners, Canada and Mexico. Really kind of trying to ensure that some of that channeling of trade by Chinese companies through Mexico doesn't sort of sneak in the door. But of course, that leaves Mexico really struggling. Mexico's doing okay, but they just put out their growth forecast, and it's pretty subdued for next year. So the trade wars, the immigration policy, the frictions between the U.S. and Mexico are not great for the Mexican economy, and are not great for Texas, to be honest. Texas is okay, but usually Texas is a bright, shining star. I'm living here in Austin, and the Texas economy it's okay, but it's not the bright, shining spot it used to be, because all of these things, the trade wars, the immigration policy, really do hit Texas hard too.
Interesting. We're talking about the unemployment rate. It's at 4.4%, I believe, right here. Is there a number, Julia, where the Fed just says, oh boy, we've got a labor problem?
Well, I think, we're above their longer run estimate of 4.2%. I think once we start heading north of 4.5%, and it's not just the level matters. So I think we're at a level that's a little worrisome. When we saw the unemployment rate rising last summer, we were rising from such a low level that it was kind of hard to worry too much about it, right? We were going from 3.4 to the low fours. That was sort of more of a normalization in conditions than a weakening. Now we're at the low fours. We're at sort of neutral or longer run, and we're rising from here to a labor market that's clearly loosening. If you look at, like, say, the Conference Board survey of consumers,
right,
consumers are getting gloomy about the labor market. If you look at nominal wage growth, the Indeed wage tracker is what we have on a most timely basis, showing wage growth decelerating below the rate of inflation. These are indications that the labor market is not just balanced, but weak.
She's got me going here.
Oh,
Tom Porcelli's over at PGIM. Do you know, even in the cold weather, he takes the Hinckley picnic boat
Does he?
down the Hudson River to
Very
go to
good.
PGIM in Jersey City. Okay, you just said it, Julia. The real wage is flatlining, declining, however you want to describe it as well. You're telling me the Fed is going to look at that and ignore it to worry about inflation dynamics? I don't buy it for a minute.
No, and you shouldn't, because if this continues, then the Fed will cut, and it will cut in December. It's poised to cut in December for exactly that reason. When we saw the September labor report, we said going in, the most important number is the unemployment rate. Forget payrolls. They're overstated. They haven't been benchmarked, blah, 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 seasonal noise. Look at the unemployment rate, and it went up, and nobody expected it to go up. So that was the news. The news was the labor market is weakening. The Fed is a go. And that looks to be where they've landed. And I think, Tom, that the trick is the committee is in such a hawkish mood because the GDP tracking is so strong and the economy seems basically okay. The stock market's at the highs. So what's the big deal? Meanwhile, I've got an inflation problem. But if this labor market problem keeps creeping in and those cracks keep deepening, of course the Fed is going to pay attention to that.
Dow up 91. John from Coventry emails in and says, don't quote the Dow. I said, no, I'm going to quote the Dow.
Yes.
Dow up 93 points right now. Julia Coronado with us. Julia, everybody wants to know this, and this is great work off Axios and the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. Julia, the traffic in Austin,
brutal.
The traffic in Houston, the traffic in Texas. Why is Texas this great mecca if you can't turn left at 4 p.m.?
The traffic in Texas is terrible because we have no public transportation. We have no trains. It's the thing I miss the most about New York, is the ability to skip traffic and get on the subway or get on the Metro North and go home. So yeah,
Okay,
the
so
traffic
what are
is
you going
pretty
to do?
terrible
Come
here.
on, what are you going to do about it? You've been shortlisted for all sorts of wonderful Washington titles. What is the entrepreneurial GOP spirit of Texas going to do with that gridlock?
I don't know. You know, we did pass the Austin area did pass a big bond that does build in some public transportation. It broadens what is now a very limited train system. But being Texas, we also are just kind of expanding the highway yet again. So if you come down to Texas, Tom, you can choose multiple lane highways to get around on. It's really something, the highway system here.
Julie, the only reason we had you on was Hullabaloo Canuck Canuck. Today, 7:30 p.m., the number 16 Texas Longhorns greet the number 3 Fighting Texas Aggies of College Station. Julia, are you going?
Oof. I am not going to the game. No. But I am a Longhorn, Tom, as you know. We have not had the season we had hoped for. But, you know, we had a great last game, and hopefully that momentum continues into this one.
Very good. For Jess Metten of College Station, Texas, we say good morning as well. Julia, next time I'll have you on economics instead of Longhorn football.
That's a deal.
Dr. Coronado, thank you so much. Important comments there on the Fed.